Do scientific discoveries challenge the idea that God exists? I'm joined today by Dr. Ken Keathley, who is a Christian scholar and a professor of theology at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, to answer that question. Ken, in previous episodes, we've talked about the idea that there is scientific evidence that points to the reality of God's existence. And yet, there's this perception that people in the scientific community are resistant to the idea of a creator. They're resistant to the idea that there's design in the universe. I know you're not a scientist, but as a Christian scholar, why do you think there's this sense of resistance among scientists?
Well, the reason why there is this perception is because it's one that's been very carefully cultivated by a certain segment of the intellectual community. I'm thinking now of the Enlightenment. Those who were promoting the Enlightenment during the 17th, 18th century, they did have an agenda. Those who coined the term Enlightenment were doing so in a very deliberate way to push themselves or present themselves in contrast to the church, to people of faith. And so there were those who were wanting to set that narrative. Then in the 19th century, that narrative was taken to the limit by certain authors such as John William Draper or Andrew Dickson White in their books that presented the warfare metaphor, the conflict narrative. So, yes, there's a reason why that perception is out there. It doesn't fit the facts very well because, as we've talked about earlier, that the scientific revolution happened in Christian Europe for a reason. There were certain things about the worldview of Christian Europe that lent itself to helping and nurturing the scientific revolution. And let's remember, it isn't just men like Sir Isaac Newton and Robert Boyle and others who were very strong Christians like Lord Kelvin, but even in modern times, let's remember that George Lemaitre, who helped develop the Big Bang hypothesis, he's a Catholic priest. Mendel, who his work was the basis for genetics, another Catholic priest who's doing this type of work. When we look at the scientific community as a whole, there's not much difference percentage-wise about how many of them are believers in some type of transcendence, some type of theist, and some are explicitly Christian. Certain fields have more Christians than others, and we can talk about why that might be so. But overall, we find that there's plenty of men and women who are believers, people of faith, even evangelical Christians who are engaged in the sciences. But there are those who have an agenda. I'm thinking now of Richard Dawkins and company, who want to exploit that perception, and they do so. But historically speaking, and speaking about how the things are even today, it's not an accurate portrayal.